The release of The Walking Dead series in 2010 shocked up all fans of zombie survival and literally repopularized the genre to some unbelievable proportions. I think Josh Romero would shake Frank Darabant's hand for the work he did. It's a shame he left and things got worse. The popularity of the series blew everyone's mind, and the 10 years were truly the golden era of zombie and survival games. Yeah, at that time there were already released such games, gaining popularity zombie mode in Call of Duty, but something like what we could see in Season 1 in The Walking Dead you would hardly find. After watching it, you wanted a real survival experience, just like Rick Grimes. Wake up, put on your sheriff's hat, load up your magnum, and go looking for a tin can, hoping you don't become one.
Fantasy.
Developers from various studios got inspired and started making something similar. In 2012, the eponymous game from Telltale, The Walking Dead the game, came out, but it was still not quite about full-fledged survival. And then in 2013 comes that very moment. In 1 year, the Z mod for Arma comes out, which simply amazes with its capabilities and falls in love with hundreds of thousands of players, including me.
It was perfect. Perfect.
Although I could not play it at the time, but only to watch videos. Before that comes 7 Days to Die, which is a sandbox with zombies and character leveling, with not the most attractive graphics. Then The Last of Us, which breaks all the patterns and ideas about games. And somewhere in between, on the 8th of November in 2013, an unremarkable isometric survival game called Project Zomboid was released. At that moment I looked at it and thought that I couldn't find anything interesting here. Although the reviews were extremely positive, but isometric and survival somehow did not fit together at all. I tried something similar called How to Survive and I didn't like it at all. I considered Zomboid as unremarkable and not particularly interesting, against the background of all other games of this genre. All these years, a small team of developers almost on bare enthusiasm made their game, which was played by a couple of thousand people. And when the game finally became popular and drew attention to itself again, I decided to take a closer look at it and found one of the most important components of a good game, namely atmosphere. It's that very thing that makes this game appealing. It would seem that isometrics far from the best graphics, but in it such stories can happen to you that not one similar survival game cannot compare. Going into Project Zomboid, you can feel the real survival, which cannot be called something similar to something else.
You can recycle P to help you survive.
For example, in DZ, that feeling is there, but it feels very different. In Project Zomboid, if you play with one life, you will be tense and stressful almost all the time, because going at least for the loot in one of the houses, you can meet a few zombies who are lurking around the corner. So the game will also throw you a sound screamer, which at first will scare the crap out of you. First time very carefully getting into the houses, and killing no more than 2 or 3 zombies at the time, because your character is still quite weak and in your hands you have only a pipe. You have to turn around and watch your back, because you only see what's ahead. And if the fog descends, it's better to wait it out in a shelter or go to places not so crowded, so as not to run into a horde. And when you already have enough supplies, you found a house, barricaded yourself, and suddenly you hear someone banging on the window or door. The atmosphere here is in the details, but the details are not graphics, but are transmitted through the environment and gameplay. Being on a regular sortie, you can hear random events, such as someone scream or gunshot. At first, when you hear something like that, of course you want to go check, but so far there are no NPCs in the game. Developers want to fix it soon, by the way, and it would seem that you only hear the sound without seeing what might have happened, but it's pretty good at creeping you out. And those sounds lure the zombies in the neighborhood. And some zombies also go to check out who was screaming. Graphics here in its own way unique, though it looks like graphics of games in the early 2000s, but it works for the atmosphere. For example, recently released game, a year ago, almost a complete copy of Zomboid, but with a more pleasant graphics. But gameplay wise, it certainly doesn't compare to Zomboid. But even from the looks of it, if you compare these two games together, which one you will want to play more? The angularity of the graphics adds to the charm, and with the help of lighting, object pixelization, music and surroundings, it conveys a very correct vibe. You know, a slightly cold sense of unease, as if you've eaten some cool macarons from the fridge. It's not very pleasant, but there is something about it.
Oh, this is good. This is
Really good.
Extremely well done, and the environment of locations on which you will have to climb in search of sustenance. They're extremely disfigured, terrible places. We're going into the house. You see a shitty sofa, broken kitchen and broken barricades. And there are suburban elite settlements, where the consequences of the apocalypse can be said to have passed almost without a trace, in which it would be very pleasant to live. The locations are a nice contrast to each other. Here you can also get to the whole quarantine camp, where everything went through the ass, the defense fell, and there are only empty military tents, corridors for passing and checking people, and medical stations. The elaboration of locations here does a lot for the atmosphere, and ambient, lighting, intertwined with the leisurely pace of survival, only enhances this effect. The gameplay here is very varied and really enjoyable. At first glance, you can kill zombies, loot and craft, keep track of food and water, heal wounds, and make a base. This is of course the fundamental basis of every survival games. All of these mechanics are extremely in-depth, as they are for this kind of game of course. There is a lot of loot and various things that can be scrapped. Let's say you have a backpack full of food and medicine, and then you find a broken car, which in theory can be repaired. You look under the hood and see that you have literally looked into a real car. To start the car, you need to find a battery. If it has no wheel, you need to find a wrench to unscrew from another car. If it has a broken engine, you need to find books on mechanics, read them in real game time, during the race between forests, then find tools that can fix the engine. Well, and the key is desirable to find from the car. Details here is just a lot and it's cool. For example, sleep. It would seem a trivial thing, but if you go to bed late and get up early, after a couple of days you will accumulate fatigue, anxiety will rise. Does not remind you of anything.
That turns me on.
You can of course drink coffee or energy drinks, but that won't help you. Go get some sleep and start going to bed at 11 at night, so you don't feel like a vegetable with no desire to exist. The character's performance and his leveling is what will really help you to survive. In addition to the traits that you can choose at the start, here it also acts as a feature of your character. That is, if you take a cool trait on a strong stomach, for example, you should definitely take and one negative, in order to balance your character. So here you can create a pure-blooded freak, who can choose an athletic aesthetic physique, but he will be short-sighted with a weak stomach, who does not like to read, in addition afraid of streets. Of course you cannot take any traits and build the life of your character on your own. Acquiring both strengths, training hard in the evenings, doing 50 burpees before going to bed, so that in the morning you can get up and run from zombies. Only painkillers will help you, or daily moderate training, because if overdo it you can have a stroke. You can also find your weaknesses, like a couple of cigarettes after dinner or a can of beer before a workout. By training, your body, strength and endurance will improve, allowing you to run longer and hit harder. But also you should not forget about weight, and eat more or less correctly. Vegetable will help you in this, as well as cookery books by Gordon Ramsay. With their help you can cook soups, pasta and many other tasty and healthy foods. If your character is injured while running away from zombies, for example hit a branch, fell, cut his leg and lost his head, it will be necessary to treat it with alcohol or antiseptic and apply a bandage, periodically checking it, changing and treating, and then of course look for your head. If you don't care of the wound, it will start to fester and only antibiotics or the immunity power of your character can help. Healthy sleep, sport and nutrition will affect this as well, but if you are beaten in the heat of battle, then only it will help here. Firearms here can be useful, but not always. Zombies need to be really wary, and unnecessary skirmishes better not to engage, but not of the crookedness of their work as in DayZ, and because of the danger of being beaten, because even if you are extremely careful, there is always a chance to run into a few walkers, which in the heat of battle can bite you. Therefore, to minimize the chance of a bite, it is best to wear several pairs of clothes and underpants, because death from a bite to the groin, perhaps the most offensive.
Oh shit, I'm sorry.
It's best to move between cities or places of interest by transport, because in the forests there are also zombies, from which it will be very difficult to dodge. But even here you need to drive the car very carefully and not very fast, because the roads are full of other abandoned cars, sprouted bushes and trees, which you need to bypass, and otherwise you can break the car and halfway there stuck in the stalemate. This is especially dangerous if you broke down in the evening. In the night to go home is not an option, and therefore you can sleep overnight even in the car, but there is a chance to wake up from a crowd of zombies, which breaks your your window. In your hands as many as 9 cities to explore, one of which you can choose to appear. Each city will also differ in its complexity at the number of zombies per square centimeter, which again adds interest in exploring the world. For example, in the largest city, armed only with a stick is not worth it. It is worth to loot military tents, find weapons, but at the same time do not use it at the first opportunity, and save it for a critical case, because the hordes of zombies go slow, unless of course at the start do not put a tick on the fast zombies. Then you can basically not start playing because you will die very often, but this crowd can be from all sides, and you simply will not be where to run. Also, do not forget that the character gets tired over time, and therefore endlessly run or fight back will not work. Therefore, you really need to keep your character toned up, eat healthy food if possible, in order not to gain weight, exercise regularly after 30, even if you are tired after them. Also, in order to do certain things or actions, you need to up skills in the mechanics, electronics, fishing, medicine or cookery. For this, you need to either do a lot of these things. For example, disassemble televisions in every house to understand their structure, or find books and in the evenings before going to bed to read a chapter. Also, unlike in the real world, you can learn with the help of TV, but only in the first days after the game starts, because then the electricity runs out. You can watch survival or gardening films to become a full-stack Bear Grylls. Overall, Project Zomboid takes you with an insane amount of detail, but at the same time, the shell is very simple. Despite the isometric, simple graphics, the game hooks you with a real sense of survival. This game takes you first of all with its atmosphere. There are so many details and mechanics that are tied around survival, that sometimes you are surprised at how detailed and with love a very small team of developers approach their creation. This game they make slowly, but from this quality. The fan base from a few thousand people has turned into a few dozen, which means that the game is moving in the right direction and will present players with even more interesting innovations. Project Zomboid is a unique game that definitely deserves your attention if you like post-apocalypse with zombies. And most importantly, do not judge by screens from the game, it's better to try it yourself. It is a truly unique experience. And if you liked the video, I look forward to your subscriptions to the channel and likes and comments.